Every national commander relies on previous national commanders for advice, wisdom, and guidance on how to best lead our organization. I've been very fortunate to benefit from the knowledge and openness of past national commander Dave Rabine. With a degree in physics and master in metallurgy, I can never say it right, his intelligence is without question. But what is even more impressive is his dedication and devotion to the American Legion and honoring our great history. He is an inspired choice to serve as the chairman of the 100th Anniversary Observance Committee of the American Legion. Please welcome past National Commander David K. Rabine from the Department of Iowa.
Thank you, Commander. Commander Rohan, Adjutant Wheeler, distinguished guests up here on the dais, Legionnaires, delegates, guests. As I stand here at the podium, I think about 99 years ago, as temporary chairman Henry Lindsley gavelled the first convention to order at a spot not that far from here. Now, that convention began implementing the vision that had been born in Paris, nurtured in St. Louis, and was being clearly formalized here at that convention in Minneapolis. It was a shared vision. The four pillars: Americanism, children and youth, national security, Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation. Four pillars that still stand today. Four pillars that still support everything the American Legion stands for and does. Guided by that vision, the legacy grew over the next century. You've heard those two words quite often today: legacy and vision. We took that as the theme of the 100th Anniversary Committee as we began planning for this centennial. That planning began 5 years ago under the leadership of past National Commander, past National Adjutant Bob Spinogle. I was fortunate enough to inherit a very strong foundation that had been put together under his leadership as we finished the planning for the centennial. Well, planning is over. Execution has begun. If you were in the exhibit hall, you saw some of the results of the legacy that was laid down for us. You saw the GI Bill exhibit that really tells the story of the American Legion, how that GI Bill came to be in 1944, and how it continues to grow and improve under the care of the American Legion. You also saw chronology of many of the important events in our legacy, in our history. I hope as you looked at that chronology, you did not see that as a finished product. I hope you take pieces of things that you saw in that chronology home for you to learn more about, because that's what that chronology is really about, to acquaint everyone with the high points of our history, of our legacy. But it doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't talk about the people. It doesn't talk about all of the work that went into making those accomplishments the high points of our legacy. So vision and legacy have combined and have created an organization whose respect was demonstrated this week when our commander held up Senator McCain for the honorance and remembrance that was deserved to him. Thank you, Commander, for doing that. We have an organization because of that legacy, because of that original vision, that when this organization says something, Washington listens. That's important. It's important we have that. It's important we keep that. You'll see more of the legacy over the next year. There are more things coming. Already we have a centennial print that's hanging in the National Executive Committee room, that copies were available at emblem sales in the exhibit hall. If you didn't get one, you need one. It embodies who we are, what we stand for, and the connection that all of us that have worn the uniform carry within us. You will see material coming from a company called Fathead that you can put in your post. Wall clings that talk about the 4 pillars, that talk about the preamble, that help talk about the legacy of the American Legion. You will see a second exhibit coming. The funding has just been approved for another exhibit on the story of what the American Legion has done in the toxic substances area over the years. Radiation exposure, Agent Orange, burn pits. Without us, those servicemen and women suffering because of those toxic substances would not be considered service-connected. That's part of your legacy. And the last one, the fourth one, yes, please. The fourth one, there will be a commemorative coin that will be unveiled here. The design will be, first strike ceremony will be in January. There will be 3 of those. So look for those in January because collectors want them, I want some, and I hope you will want a set. But if all we do for our centennial is look back, we betray that legacy, because that legacy was formed from vision. And now it is time for us to form a vision for the 2nd century. Our founders led us, their vision led us to here. Where will our vision for the 2nd century take us? That's an answer yet to be determined. Our commander gavelled open the 100th convention of the American Legion. She also gavelled open the 2nd century of the American Legion. And so when we leave here with the seeds of that vision. We leave here with the seeds to grow that legacy. In another 100 years, a commander will open a convention celebrating the 2nd century, honoring the legacy that developed from those seeds that we plant here. And so when that 2nd century comes, part of our responsibility is to make sure those seeds get planted right, that they grow, that we hand over to the next generations that are coming an organization that has the strength of the one that we received from the generations that preceded us. It's my pleasure, as part of my presentation, to introduce to you a gentleman who you already met, but I want to do the introduction because he embodies the legacy that we celebrate, but he also embodies that vision because I know from my conversations with this man, he has his eyes firmly fixed on the future, as did his grandfather. Don't be fooled by the famous name of the chairman of our 100th Anniversary Honorary Committee. He may be the great-grandson of a beloved president and grandson of one of our legendary founders, but he is also, and maybe foremost, a distinguished Legionnaire and a great American in his own right. A Harvard graduate, he served 2 years in Vietnam as a Navy SEAL. He is an avid conservationist and has served on the governing council of the Wilderness Council since 1998, an investment banker and managing director at Barclays Capital Corporation, he is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Economic Club of New York, and the Foreign Policy Association. He is a paid-up-for-life member of the American Legion, Department of New York, and the recipient of the 2018 James V. Day Good Guy Award, presented by the Legion's past Department Commanders Club. Ladies and gentlemen, delegates to this convention, it is my great pleasure to present to you the chairman of our 100th Anniversary Honorary Committee, Theodore Roosevelt IV.
What a pleasure it is to be here with all of you. But I do sympathize with you. You've been in your seats for a long time, and you probably are hungry or thirsty, so I will try to keep things moving along. First of all, let me thank Commander Rabine for his generous introduction, and he was far more generous than I deserve. I also would like to salute the Legion and National Commander Rowan for her leadership in ensuring that Senator McCain got the honors that he deserved for a lifetime of service. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. came to this city with one priority a century ago: the future of the American Legion. He and his fellow founders identified the needs of returning World War I veterans, with dogged persistence pursuing those needs, and this included the creation of the VA and the passage of the GI Bill. With great respect for the Legion's founding legacy, the 100th Anniversary Honorary Committee focused on a second-century vision for future in 4 key areas. First, strengthening relationships with post-9/11 generation veterans, groups like Team Red, White, and Blue, Team Rubicon, The Mission Continues, and Student Veterans of America. Second, demanding in tandem with the Legion's Veteran Affairs and Rehabilitation Commission an efficient, effective VA healthcare system. Third, improving career opportunities for veterans and their families. It is utterly essential that companies and industries in this country understand that the very best employees that they can hire are veterans. And finally, giving voice to the Legion's vital mission to improve treatment of PTSD and TBI and reducing dependency on prescription drugs. Remarkably, these areas are not that dissimilar to what founders of the American Legion sought to address. What we now call PTSD, the early Legionnaires called shell shock. And like today, they demanded federal recognition for sufferers, resources for treatment, and support for families. The American Legion job fairs and career events of today were executed by local posts in the 1920s that recruited and even transported veterans to logging camps, mines, and farm fields for seasonal work. Student veterans, athletes, community volunteers, and first responders went by different names than those we know today, but purpose-driven veterans like them have been around all of the last century. The American Legion welcomes them, one war era to the next, and joins forces with them for the greater good. It is important to remember that there was no VA when the American Legion was established. Now, millions of veterans receive health care, home loans, education, and training through the VA. At any one time today, some 3,000 American Legion service officers are working on nearly 800,000 VA benefit cases free of charge. It does say a little bit about the complexity of working with the VA. and millions of volunteer hours are being logged at VA healthcare facilities every year by members of the American Legion family. A healthy VA for the future must always be a priority for the American Legion, regardless of what century it is. The American Legion 100th Anniversary Honorary Committee consists of distinguished people whose lives have been touched by this organization and its progress. Some of those committee members were kind enough to join us and will share their thoughts with you today. I have had the immense good fortune over the past several years to get to know some of them well, and my respect and admiration grows commensurately with the passage of time. In my introduction of each of them, I will be briefer than I would have liked, but their backgrounds are so interesting and so distinguished that in the interest of time, I must respect the need for brevity. I'd like to begin with a fellow Vietnam War veteran to come up and take the microphone and talk about the American Legion's place in her life, both as a combat nurse and later as the leading force to recognize the military service of women in the Vietnam War on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Diane Carlson Evans.
Thank you, National Commander Rowan. We're so proud to have a woman in our 100th anniversary leading this great organization. Wouldn't the founders just be so happy? Chairman Roosevelt, thank you. It's been such a pleasure to get to know this great gentleman and the rest of the committee members that I've had the privilege and honor to serve with over the last couple of years. But my brother and sister veterans whom are sitting before me, and in particular a shout out to River Falls, Wisconsin, Northfield, Minnesota, and Helena, Montana, all the posts that I have belonged to over the years who have embraced me and helped me move along in my mission with their help. We've talked this morning about the preamble. And you'll remember that one of the 10 cardinal principles of our preamble is to inculcate a sense of individual obligation to the community, state, and nation. The founders of the American Legion believed that United States citizenship meant more than identifying oneself as a place of residence in the United States. That with that citizenship comes responsibility. The American Legion Citizenship Award presented to me upon my graduation from high school in 1964 impelled that sense of responsibility in me a very long time ago. Feeling undeserving, the award haunted me because I wondered why I was chosen and what could I do now to deserve it. Good citizens aren't born, they're created. They're shaped by circumstances and the people around them. And I believe that begins at home, at school, in our churches, and in our community. Just 1 hour northwest from this convention center in Buffalo, Minnesota, I grew up on a dairy farm. In our family, since homesteading it in 1863, and it is still farmed today by my family. My Swedish grandparents, who crossed the ocean, quickly learned English, built a one-room country school across from the farm, built roads, built a church, and helped the new immigrants who came by the thousands to homestead rich Minnesota farmland. My dad helped put up the first telephone poles and was the guy the neighbors called to climb back up them and fix them when the party lines went dead. My dad didn't work for Ma Bell, Northwestern Bell. He was a volunteer. Dad was on the school board. That meant he painted the school, fixed the water pump, chopped the wood, stacked it, and stoked the fires every morning in our potbelly stove before school. And every fall, he removed the screens and installed the storm windows. Another volunteer duty. My mother was a registered nurse, and she was the Florence Nightingale of the community to all the farm families who didn't want to go to the doctor or couldn't afford it, so they called Mom for free advice. They shared their tools and their farm equipment with the neighbors, and they shared us 6 kids to go out and help the neighbors when they needed us. My parents were good citizens. Always interested in building a better nation, the founders of the American Legion believed that such building must first start with the individual in his own community. That means, quote, educating the citizen young, old, and future in his and her responsibility to be active in making the hometown a better place in which to live, discharging the duty of voting in elections, paying taxes promptly, and contributing to the community chest funds and to blood banks. Now, the word inculcate refers to impress by frequent admonitions and to enforce by frequent repetitions. Well, my mother gave us frequent repetitions, and my dad gave us frequent admonitions. And all 6 of us were reminded that these duties of good citizenship remain to be carried forward and are never finished. My oldest brother joined the Army, 101st Airborne, in 1963. My next brother was drafted in 1965. I joined the Army Student Nurse Program in 1966. After graduating from nursing school and then basic training, I volunteered to serve in the Vietnam War and do what my brothers were doing, and the farm boys all around me were doing, serving our country. As a citizen of this nation, I felt this was my duty too, and I had that American Legion Citizenship Award hanging very heavy around my neck. My parents were left with the youngest 3 to admonish and repeat the importance of personal obligation to community, state, and nation. My parents' youngsters grew up in the Vietnam era. When we left, they lost 3 pairs of hardworking hands and the innocence of sleeping soundly at night, knowing their kids were safe. We weren't. I spent every day in country with my medics, fellow nurses, doctors, and those wonderful helicopter brave pilots, trying my best to save as many lives as humanly possible. We were a team then, a team willing to sacrifice our lives for others. That experience shaped the rest of my life, and yes, it continues to do so today. The greatest privilege of my life was to serve as a trauma nurse in a combat zone, caring for the wounded and dying. In 1982, with the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, our wall of names, I realized I had unfinished business left. My work for my brother and sister veterans was not over. I had to find my voice and start to fight again. This time, I needed the help of the American Legion. I told a few members of my dream to honor my sister veterans of that war with a monument recognizing their service and sacrifice, and that I needed help. They didn't hesitate, but they told me it would take hard work starting at the post level. Some wise members told me how it's done, and they would be at my side all along the way. Certainly, they were guided by the American Legion's one of the American Legion's 10 preamble principles to preserve the memories and incidents of our associations in great wars. What a wonderful principle to begin with. And that quote from the preamble means the unerasable recollection of the comradeship, the bravery of pals, the teamwork of the sacrifices, the miseries and the hardships of military campaigns shared in common. It means that the bond that binds all ex-servicemen and women together in mutual affection, respect, and gratitude. It also means keeping green forever the memories of the supreme sacrifices of those gallant American patriots necessary to the winnings of war. The preamble's words that responsibilities are never finished are as true today as 100 years ago. I trust that in the next 100 years, Legionnaires will continue their resolve with passion and foresight to preserve the intent of the 10 clauses of the preamble by leaving more footprints of those men and women who personify good citizenship. Thank you.
Diane, thank you so much for that. It's such an inspiring story. Please help me welcome Jamie Corkish, an American Legion junior shooting sports champion who set an Olympic record on her way to a gold medal in the 2012 London Games. Because of a rule change, her record will stand for all time. Following that historic moment, she devoted her time and talent to help other young shooters achieve their dreams. Jamie.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank the American Legion for inviting me to this amazing event. It truly is an honor. I look around and I am not an honorary guest here. All of you truly are. It is a pleasure to be able to attend this event with so many veterans and heroes. You all have unique stories, and being able to pass those stories and experience on to the next generation, to learn and embrace all you have done in life is a tremendous honor, and I encourage you all to continue to do that. In 2002, I was invited to compete at the American Legion Junior Shooting Sports National Championship in Colorado Springs, Colorado, at the Olympic Training Center. This match is unique in that there's a scholarship to be won, and in the shooting sports, that scholarship means a lot. Most shooters don't go on to use shooting as a way to have income in their life, so those scholarships truly are an amazing way to help the youth be able to get a college education and go on to a career. What is most important to me is not only the support of the National American Legion, but also the support of the veterans in the communities around the country. I started shooting competitive BB gun when I was 8 years old in my basement. As a younger sister, all I ever wanted to do was to beat my brother in anything he tried to do. My competitive drive started at a very, very young age. At 15, I transitioned into competing in the Olympic-style shooting events. It was at the age of 16, I set a goal to not only represent the United States at the Olympics, but to bring home a medal for the United States of America. It would be 12 years later, a college degree, years of training, many, many failures, and few successes, and many people to help me along the way that I completed this goal. Early in my shooting career, I was lucky enough to meet my mentor and the most successful rifle shooter of all time in the world, Colonel Lone Zwigger, a veteran who shared his military competition stories with me and helped me pave the path to a successful career. Lones was my hero and longtime mentor and friend. Sadly, we lost him in December. In 2008, I made my first Olympic team. In my first event and the very first Olympic medal awarded at the Olympic Games, women's air rifle, I finished 4th. I was ecstatic, surprisingly, because I really did not enjoy shooting this event. It was only days later that I had the chance to meet my goal in 3 position, my favorite event. However, my last shot of the games took me from a medal position to 5th place. I was devastated, to say the least. I made a decision to work every day the next 4 years to not allow that to happen again. In 2012, I had another chance. I made the 2012 Olympic team and again shot air rifle to try to win the first Olympic medal for the United States, to which I finished 5th. Days later, I had another chance. I had many chances, luckily. To which I not only won the gold medal in London, but I also set an Olympic record in the women's 3-position shooting event in London. The most amazing thing about winning a medal is the time you get to spend on the podium. It's emotional. If you watch the Olympic Games, you see many people crying on the podium. It truly is an emotional time. To hear our national anthem and to see the stars and stripes rising high. But for me, that emotion came from all those that had an influence on my shooting career, my family and coaches, and the many men and women that supported me through the way, including the many veterans at the American Legion. Each and every person I have come across in life has had some kind of influence on me. And that time spent on the podium was reflecting upon every single person I've ever come across in life. The medal I brought home wasn't just for me. It was for me to share with the many people of the United States of America. When I went back home to Pennsylvania after winning the gold, I had veterans from our local American Legion post come to the courthouse to help me celebrate my win with the community. I will forever be grateful to all of the many men and women that not only serve this country, but that also choose to give back to their communities, especially through the youth organizations. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to experience early success as a college scholarship through the American Legion if it weren't for those that choose to mentor the youth throughout their communities. I can't thank the American Legion enough for the support and emphasis they put on our youth. We've all had mentors through life, and the young people today continue and need our support. Thank you again for giving your valuable time to help them learn and pave a path for the future. Today, I have the opportunity to be a mentor. I coach junior shooters across the country. I'm a hunter's education instructor, and I volunteer at schools to talk about hard work, dedication, perseverance, and drive. It's an honor to be able to be a positive influence to the next generation. I thank each one of you for putting your time into our youth and for providing them with a mentor that they can learn from. I can only hope my children have a mentor as great as the veteran I had to learn from. You are providing our youth with a great opportunity, and I thank you for your service then and now.
What a great story about determination and tenacity. Thank you, Diane. A former NBC News Vice President, Val Nicholas, an Army veteran who also has volunteered as an American Legion Post-Service Officer and as a judge of the American Legion National Oratorical Contest, will join us and share some of his thoughts with us. Val?
Good afternoon, American Legion. That was feeble. Good afternoon, American Legion. There you are. Okay, I have been around for a while. In fact, thank you to Senator Dole. She and I and a number of others helped get that Hidden Heroes thing off the ground, and it's just turned into something magnificent. Over the years, I've won a number of Emmys and all sorts of other things in television, but I have to tell you, this is the single greatest honor of my life, to be able to stand here before my fellow veterans,
auxiliary members, and sons, and I thank you for this privilege. But I would be remiss if we did not do a shout out to the person who changed the president's mind with a single letter backed by all of us to have the flags returned to half-mast and to issue an official note praising John McCain for his incredible service to this country. American Legion, let's hear it for our national commander, Denise Rowan. Wow, we get music and everything. That's cool. I'm here to talk about service, and I'm old, so I need my glasses. And I could not talk about service without doing a quote from an American hero. And this hero said, "Every day, people service their neighborhoods and our nation in many different ways, from helping a child learn and easing the loneliness of those without a family, to defending the freedom of our country overseas. It's the spirit of dedication to others and to the country that I believe service should be boldly and deeply encouraged." And that American hero was a naval officer, a POW, and a United States Senator, and his name was John McCain. To serve, yeah, give it up for him. Bona fide hero. To serve means putting the interests of others above your own. Or as another naval officer once said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And that officer was Lieutenant Commander Spock of the United Starship Enterprise. I think because he was in Starfleet, he still counts as a veteran. He's one of us. I was a service officer for many years at Post 1 in Leonia, New Jersey. I knew I'd hear from you guys. I helped a lot of our brothers and sisters get their rightful benefits, because any of you who had to maneuver your way through the VA, you know what that's like. But I always found that the small victories were the most rewarding. There was this one family who'd gone through everything to try to get their flag, their funeral flag, for their fallen one, and they'd gone through everything, and it was just a nightmare. So somebody sent them to us. And so I called them, the agency, and I don't evoke what I normally call the double N word, but I told them to call me back at my office at NBC News. Well, surprisingly, they got the flag the next day. It's weird how that works. Who says that the fake news never gets anything done? Oh, that's a rim shot. That's a piano rim shot right there. When it comes to service, I always say, you can't help everybody, but you can help somebody. You can't save everybody, but you can save somebody. And you can't serve everybody, but you can damn well go down trying to do that. And that's why I never quit, and that's why I have this card, which says I'm paid for life, and I will continue to do it for life. Service is made up of purpose, duty, honor, loyalty, and the most of all, the most important thing is confidence. Confidence is contagious. A quick story, I was in armor, and one day me and my tank driver, a kid named Ed Bach from Indianapolis, we decided we needed a day off. And you can't just take a day off in the Army. So we knew where there was this giant mound of dirt. So we took a vehicle and a trailer and a bunch of shovels and then some beers and our comic books, and we'd sit around reading comics and drinking beer until a senior officer would come by, and then we would jump up and shovel like crazy. And they'd walk by and go, "Carry on, troopers." Man, if I had 100 guys like that, I could win this war. We were so confident that not once all day long did anybody ask what the hell we were doing. In fact, I thought we were going to get promoted. So in closing about service, I'd like to propose a toast. Here's to us and those like us. Damn few left. We few, we happy few, in the greatest service organization on this planet. The American Legion is still serving America. Why? Because we raised our hands and we said that we would protect the nation. But we also said we would never leave anybody behind. And as far as I know, we never put our hands back down. So God bless you, God bless the American Legion, and God bless these United States of America. Thank you.
Lastly, Susan Eisenhower, an international and well-respected and distinguished foreign policy analyst with particular expertise on Russia and the author of numerous books, will come up and talk to us. Susan.
Well, thank you very much, Ted. I appreciate those nice words. I hope you'll forgive me if I've abandoned the remarks I might have been appropriate a couple of hours ago, because I think there's some things I want to say directly from my heart. First of all, I want to thank Ted Roosevelt as chairman and Commander Rowan and others for giving me this opportunity to serve on the 100th Anniversary Committee. I live in Washington, D.C., and I must say that I can't begin to tell you what an honor it was to be on the committee, but how deeply moving it's been to be here today and to hear all of these extraordinary stories of what is happening out there in America. Commander Rowan, I would like to commend you as well for an extraordinary act on behalf of the American people. That Senator John McCain received the respect he deserved. I see this in some way as a kind of gap between the civilian community and those who have served their country in the military. And that makes the mission of the American Legion more important than ever to bridge that gap and to bring young people into this large community. Let me say I was also very moved by the wonderful display this morning about the history of the American Legion. There's no question that this institution has become one of the most influential advocates for veterans in our country, and how moved I was by the story of Ted Roosevelt's grandfather. And the vision he had and the tenacity to get this started. This is an extremely difficult thing to do, and what an extraordinary legacy the Roosevelt family has. I regard it as a tremendous privilege for me to be able to call Ted Roosevelt IV my friend. Now, the 100th anniversary of the American Legion is extraordinarily significant to me for another reason. Many of you know about my grandfather, Dwight Eisenhower, who I will say something about in a minute, and wasn't he good looking there with his American Legion cap on? I noticed that picture. But I would like to say that now, understanding more fully the extraordinary work of this organization, I'd like to think that my maternal grandfather, Percy W. Thompson, was the great beneficiary of so much of this organization's work. My maternal grandfather, Percy, fought in combat in the First World War, the Second World War, and the Korean War. And then at the age of 70, he retired as a military officer, read for the Florida Bar Association, and became a lawyer in Gainesville, Florida, accepting only the indigent and others who could not afford legal services. No doubt he was helped enormously by the American Legion along the way, and I suspect that he was a Legionnaire as well. So let me say, as I stand here today, I want to commend the American Legion for everything they've done, where I met them for the first time on a person-to-person basis in Normandy, France. It has been remarked today that we're going to have the 75th anniversary of the D-Day events this June, and followed the following year by the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. This is an extraordinary milestone in the fight during World War II against tyranny. And in my travels to Normandy, one of the most extraordinary things I've observed is this deep wellspring of affection for the American people and for our alliance during that war, because not only did we come to liberate France and Europe, but people in Europe were so struck by the compassion with which our servicemen fulfilled their duties and our mission. As a matter of fact, people in Europe knew then, and I believe still know today, that they can think of our servicemen as their allies. They're allies in more than just a military sense, but in a spiritual sense. And so the extraordinary thing is after World War II was over, 25 years before, this organization had been founded, and our servicemen knew that they could come back and see the American Legion and know that they had an ally in the United States, an ally that would look after them, look after their interests, go on to establish a GI Bill that is still with us today, to get them the kind of health care they needed. Now, you know this better than I do. I've never served in combat, but and I've never actually served in the military, though I've served on many government commissions as a way to fulfill my patriotic duty. But I have had an experience myself with having the American Legion with me at my side. I don't know how many of you have been following the story of the Eisenhower Memorial that was begun about 15 years ago. As a matter of fact, I'm deeply grateful as a member of the Eisenhower family to thank Senator Bob Dole and Senator Elizabeth Dole for their stalwart support of that effort. But behind us all the way was the American Legion as well. The original design, which was rather extraordinary, was all about Ike. And while many people who have gone on to be acknowledged in Washington through a memorial might have liked that, I can tell you my grandfather never thought of anything he did as being about himself. It was always for others. And the family led a rather noisy campaign, I would say, to try and refashion this memorial that would be more reflective of his own deep inner philosophical thoughts and his own approach to life. And what we so appreciated was the American Legion standing with my family during a very, very difficult time. You know, nothing is more difficult, of course, than agreeing upon historic memory. In any case, the memorial today is going to show as its backdrop not the scene of the American countryside, though that is very important, but it's actually going to be the backdrop of the beaches of Normandy in peacetime. I think this is appropriate because, of course, Ike didn't do it alone. And that backdrop is going to symbolize, of course, the people who followed him on this great and historic moment, and then into the heart of Germany for victory in Europe. Also, Ike will no longer be a figure as both general and president alone. The memorial, when it is unveiled, will see a General Eisenhower speaking to combat troops before they go to Normandy, and also as President of the United States consulting with his advisors. Ike was a great leader. Many people have said that. I'm humbled by my relationship to him and the fact that I knew him so well. But how much happier he will be to be standing in Washington against a backdrop of Normandy in peacetime, surrounded by the people he counted on in combat and in making our country a better place. Now I know what it's like to have the American Legion as an ally, and I just can't thank you enough. Thank you.
You have now seen and heard from 4 of the other committee members, and you now understand as clearly as I do why it's been such a privilege to be able to serve on this committee. I'm immensely grateful and immensely honored to have been able to do this. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the opportunity to play some small role in the great story of the American Legion. It is a story that belongs to all of you because it is the fruit of so very many labors, so much goodwill, so much tenacity. I know and trust that the foundation of the American Legion is sound, that it will always pursue its mission consistent with its founders' values with one clear vision: what do our servicemen and women need today? As long as our veterans need advocates, as long as troops need support, and children need mentors, the American Legion will play a vital role in the future of our nation. On behalf of my fellow honorary committee members, congratulations to the American Legion for reaching this rare milestone: 100 years of service to community, state, and nation. I am confident that Grandfather and his fellow veterans of the Great War would be pleased today.
What a great committee we have. The woman elected in Reno to lead the organization, of which I am also a very proud member, is eligible for membership in the American Legion Auxiliary through the service of her late father, World War II veteran Roland Dushek. A retired school teacher, she served as Wisconsin's department president from 1944 to 1995. She is a graceful example of service, not self. She is also my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, the leader of the nation's largest patriotic women's organization, the American Legion Auxiliary, National President Diane Dushek.
Thank you very much. So, Commander Denise, Legion officers, members, guests, I have to tell you it has been quite an honor this year to be able to travel with Denise. And obviously, since we're both from Wisconsin, we've known one another almost